The sky above Arvith was a swirl of smoke and fire. Jagged shards of rock floated in the thin, toxic atmosphere, remnants of a planet long torn apart by war. Captain Elias Kane moved carefully through the ruins of what had once been a bustling alien city. The streets were silent, but the echoes of destruction hung heavily, as if the planet itself remembered every scream, every clash of weapons, every life lost. He could smell burning metal, scorched stone, and the acrid scent of alien chemicals. It was a smell that clung to his lungs and stayed there, reminding him that survival was a choice, not a right. His squad followed close behind, rifles at the ready. Each soldier was tense, their eyes scanning every shadow, every ruined building, every crater that might conceal an ambush. They were humans, and humanity had learned the hard way that caution could mean the difference between life and death. The war with the Zarkan Empire had been long, brutal, and unyielding. Entire star systems had fallen, and yet humans continued to fight, not because they were invincible, but because they refused to give up. That stubbornness, that refusal to surrender, was something no alien force had ever truly understood. Elias paused and knelt behind a broken wall. The view ahead was chaos. Alien drones patrolled the streets, their glowing eyes scanning for movement. In the distance, explosions erupted as human artillery struck enemy supply lines. Elias' heart raced, but he forced himself to breathe evenly. Panic was dangerous, especially on a battlefield. Every soldier depended on him not just to lead them, but to keep them alive. He adjusted the strap of his rifle and motioned for his squad to spread out. "Eyes open," he muttered. "Keep it tight, keep it quiet. We don't know what's out there." His voice was low but firm, carrying the authority that came from years of fighting and surviving. The soldiers nodded, moving like shadows among the rubble. They had all seen the worst of war, and yet somehow they continued. That was what Elias loved, hated sometimes, about humans, their persistence. Their unwillingness to stop, even when the odds were stacked against them. A sudden explosion rocked the street ahead. Dust and debris filled the air, and the squad instinctively dropped to the ground. Elias' hands itched for his rifle, but he waited, observing. From the haze, a figure stumbled into view. At first, it looked like another soldier, perhaps a young Zarkan recruit, but the closer it came, the clearer it became that this was something else entirely. The figure was small, no taller than a human child. Pale-skinned, with large, round eyes that reflected both fear and intelligence. Her clothes were unlike any soldier Elias had seen, elegant, almost ceremonial, with intricate patterns of gold and violet woven across her tunic. A small, glowing device pulsed in her hands, casting a soft light in the smoky street. She looked lost, alone, and completely out of place in the middle of a battlefield. Elias' instincts screamed caution. This could be a trap, a decoy, a lure. But something in her eyes stopped him from raising his weapon. Fear, yes, but also trust, or at least the faintest suggestion of it. He stood slowly, raising his hands just enough to show he meant no immediate harm. "It's okay," he said, his voice calm. "I'm not going to hurt you." She took a tentative step forward, and then another. Elias realized she was choosing to trust him, even in the middle of chaos. It was a quiet, human moment of connection in a world filled with death and destruction. Without thinking, Elias bent down and gently scooped her into his arms. The child stiffened, then relaxed slightly when she realized he wasn't harming her. His squad watched in stunned silence, unsure whether to fire, flee, or protect. Elias looked down at her face. She was young, no more than 8 or 9, with wide, violet eyes that seemed far older than her years. "Who are you?" he asked softly. "Are you alone?" Whatever it was, it pulsed with energy, and he felt a faint vibration through his hands. Not harmful, but powerful, dangerous maybe, but not threatening yet. He stood carefully, scanning the battlefield again. Alien drones had noticed movement, their mechanical eyes locked onto the squad. "Move!" Elias shouted. He ducked behind a pile of rubble, pulling the child close to his chest. Bullets and laser bolts tore through the air around them, sparks flying from the broken walls. He led his squad through narrow alleys and collapsed buildings, his mind calculating every step. Where could they go? How could they survive? Every human instinct screamed urgency, every lesson from years of combat guided him. As they ran, the child remained silent but observant. She seemed to understand danger instinctively, shifting in his arms when a bolt passed too close. Elias realized she wasn't helpless. She had awareness, a sense of caution, and perhaps even intelligence beyond her years. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't just in its weapons or technology, he thought. It was in their ability to adapt, to recognize danger, to protect those who needed them most. They reached a ruined plaza, momentarily safe behind the remains of a shattered statue. The child clung to him, her small fingers gripping his armor. Elias knelt and looked at her, his mind racing. Who was she? Princess? Spy? Survivor? And what was that device in her hands? It pulsed softly like a heartbeat, and Elias could feel its energy even through the fabric of her clothing. Listen, he said, crouching to her level. You're safe with us, I promise, but we need to keep moving. Can you walk? The child nodded slightly, her eyes wide. Slowly, carefully, Elias helped her stand. She was small, fragile, but there was something unbreakable in the way she carried herself. Humans could sense it, the spark of determination that refused to be extinguished, no matter how young, no matter how small. As they moved through the ruins, they passed bodies on both sides. Humans and aliens alike lay fallen, victims of a war neither side fully understood anymore. Elias' heart clenched at the sight, but he kept moving. There was no time to grieve, only time to survive, to protect, and to keep moving forward. The child remained close, her small hand brushing against his armor occasionally, a quiet reminder of why they fought. Hours passed. The sun, if it could be called that through the thick smoke, dipped low on the horizon. The battlefield quieted, but not for long. In the distance, they could see the lights of alien patrols moving through the wreckage. Elias knew they couldn't stay here. They needed shelter, somewhere secure, somewhere humans could protect them until they understood what they had found. Finally, they reached the remains of an old human transport ship, half buried in rubble. Elias pried open the hatch and guided the child inside. She looked around, her eyes scanning every shadow, every corner. Then slowly she set down the glowing device. It pulsed once, then dimmed slightly, as if acknowledging that it was safe for now. Elias sat beside her, exhausted but alert. "You're safe here," he whispered. "I won't let anything happen to you." The child didn't speak, but she leaned slightly against him, a tiny gesture that felt like trust. In that moment, amidst the ruins, amidst the smoke and the fire, humanity's core strength shone through: courage, compassion, and the instinct to protect life, even when it belonged to someone from the enemy's side. Outside, the battlefield remained dangerous, but inside the transport, there was a fragile peace. Elias could hear the hum of the child's device, faint and steady, and he knew it was a symbol of something greater, not just power but potential. A future that neither humans nor aliens fully understood, yet one that could be shaped by the choices they made here today. He glanced at his squad, who were securing the perimeter. They were weary, battle-worn, and afraid, but they had fought with him, survived with him, and now they watched over this small, mysterious child. Humanity had endured worse, and it had always endured. Elias realized that this child, this alien princess, had become a test of human resilience, human compassion, and human courage. And humans did not fail tests like this. For the first time that day, Elias allowed himself a brief, tired smile. The war was far from over. The galaxy was still burning. But in his arms he held something precious, something that might change the course of the war or the course of history itself. Humanity, he thought, had the power to survive. And perhaps, just perhaps, it had the power to inspire even those who once called them enemies. He looked down at the child, violet eyes wide and shining. "We'll get through this," he whispered. "Together." The night on Arvith was heavy, thick with smoke that curled through the ruins like living shadows. The stars were barely visible above the haze, and the shattered moon hung like a pale eye watching the devastation below. Captain Elias Kane crouched inside the wrecked transport ship, the child princess still pressed against him. Her violet eyes shone faintly in the dim light, reflecting a mixture of fear and curiosity. Outside, the battlefield was alive with the distant hum of alien patrols. Elias could hear the faint clatter of armored feet on debris and the low, mechanical whirring of drones scanning for survivors. He gripped his rifle tightly, every muscle in his body ready to spring into action. He had faced impossible odds before, but tonight felt different. This was not just a battle for survival. This was a moment that could define humanity's place in a galaxy filled with enemies. He glanced at the child, who had finally set the glowing device down beside her. It pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat, and Elias could feel its energy radiating in the cramped space. She didn't speak, but she watched him carefully, as if studying every movement, every expression. Elias realized that even though she was small and young, she possessed a calm awareness that was unusual for someone her age. Humanity's greatest gift, he thought, was not weapons or armor, but the ability to inspire trust, even in those who should have feared them. "Stay close," he whispered. "We don't know what's out there." The child nodded slightly, her small hand brushing against his armor in a gesture that felt like both reassurance and a plea for protection. Elias felt a surge of determination. He would keep her safe, no matter the cost. The quiet was broken by a distant explosion. A human supply cache had been hit by orbital artillery, and the shockwave rattled the walls of the transport. Dust fell from the ceiling, and Elias' squad tightened their formation, rifles raised. The alien patrols were closing in, drawn by the vibrations of battle and the faint energy signature of the child's device. They had no time to rest. "Move out," Elias ordered. He lifted the hatch carefully, peering into the darkness. The streets were empty at first, but he could see the glow of alien sensors scanning for life. Shadows shifted in the corners of the ruined buildings, and the hum of machinery grew louder. The patrols were coordinated, intelligent, and relentless. He led his squad through the narrow alleys, the child cradled safely against his chest. Every step was calculated, every decision a matter of survival. They moved quietly, using rubble as cover, ducking behind shattered walls and climbing over debris. Elias' mind worked like a machine, constantly analyzing, predicting, calculating. His experience, combined with the innate resourcefulness of humans, gave them a chance, even against superior numbers. The first wave hit them suddenly. Alien drones dropped from the sky, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Elias fired his rifle, bullets striking metal and sparks flying. His squad fought with precision, using every trick they had learned in years of combat. One soldier, Corporal Juno, hurled a makeshift EMP grenade, disabling several drones at once. Another, Lieutenant Verk, rigged a fallen hover vehicle to explode, creating a temporary barrier of fire and smoke. Through it all, Elias kept the child protected. When a drone swooped low, its blaster aimed directly at them. He pushed her to the ground and rolled behind a pile of rubble. The energy bolts struck inches from where they had been, sending shards of stone and metal flying. The child pressed her face into his armor, trembling, but Elias could feel her resolve growing. She had witnessed death, destruction, and chaos, and yet she had not screamed or panicked. She had trusted him. The battle dragged on. Aliens advanced in waves, their strategies evolving with each engagement, but humans adapted faster. Elias and his squad used traps, improvised weapons, and guerrilla tactics to outmaneuver the enemy. They were fewer in number, but they had something the aliens did not: determination, courage, and the ability to think outside rigid protocols. Every time the aliens gained ground, the humans found a way to push back, to survive, to protect the child in their care. Hours passed, and exhaustion began to weigh on the soldiers. Sweat mixed with dust, and every breath burned in their lungs. Yet Elias refused to relent. He had carried countless soldiers to safety before, but this was different. The child in his arms was not just an ally, she was a symbol, a spark of hope in a war that had consumed entire worlds. Humanity had always risen to challenges, and this moment was no different. At one point, they reached a collapsed bridge, the only way forward blocked by twisted metal and jagged rock. Elias knelt, examining the debris. The child watched silently, her violet eyes wide. She extended her small hand toward the glowing device beside her. Hesitantly, Elias allowed her to pick it up again. The device pulsed brighter, responding to her touch. Suddenly, the device emitted a burst of energy. Aliens patrolling nearby recoiled as if struck by an invisible force. Elias realized that the child was not just defenseless, she had power, latent, untrained, but immense. Humanity had faced countless enemies before, but rarely had they encountered a force that could shift the balance of battle so subtly, yet so dramatically. "Stay close," Elias whispered again. The child nodded, and he continued leading the squad forward. Each step was measured, every movement deliberate. The aliens regrouped, more cautious now, sensing that this small human force was not to be underestimated. Elias felt a flicker of pride. Humans were not invincible, but they were adaptable, clever, and unyielding. That was why they survived. That was why they endured. As they advanced, they found temporary shelter in the ruins of an old command center. It was barely intact, but it offered cover. Elias stationed his squad around the perimeter, rifles ready, eyes scanning for movement. The child sat in the center, clutching her device. She remained silent, but Elias could sense her awareness growing. She was learning, observing, and perhaps beginning to understand that these humans were not her enemies. The night stretched on. Alien patrols continued to probe the area, testing for weaknesses. Each engagement was tense, each firefight a test of skill and nerve. Elias' squad fought with precision, coordinating seamlessly despite exhaustion. They used the environment to their advantage, luring enemies into traps and ambushes. Every victory was small but vital. Every moment of survival reinforced the truth that humanity's greatest weapon was not firepower alone, but courage, ingenuity, and the will to protect those who could not protect themselves. At one point, a larger alien unit arrived, a heavily armored patrol meant to sweep the area clean. Ilias knew they could not survive a direct confrontation. He ordered his squad to prepare traps and distractions, improvising with debris, energy pulses, and old human technology scavenged from the ruins. When the aliens advanced, they found themselves ensnared in a deadly dance of human strategy and resilience. Explosions erupted, energy pulses disrupted alien systems, and the soldiers moved like shadows among the smoke and fire. The child's device pulsed again, and Ilias noticed something remarkable. It seemed to resonate with the human technology around them. Small energy bursts disabled alien weapons temporarily, giving the squad precious moments to strike. Ilias realized that the child's presence was more than a liability. It was a potential turning point. Humanity had always found strength in unexpected places, and now that strength was literally glowing in his arms. By dawn, the alien patrols had withdrawn, regrouping for another attack. Ilias' squad was battered but alive. The child had remained calm throughout, sometimes whispering in her own language, sometimes simply observing. Ilias looked down at her and felt a surge of determination. The war was far from over, but for now they had survived. They had protected life in the midst of chaos, and that was a victory in itself. The first light of day revealed the extent of the devastation. Arvith was a broken world, a testament to centuries of conflict. Yet in the midst of ruins and smoke, a small group of humans had endured. They had adapted, fought, and protected something precious. Ilias realized that this was the essence of humanity: courage, compassion, and the refusal to surrender, even when the odds were overwhelming. He looked at the child, who now stood beside him, still clutching her device. Her eyes met his, and in that silent exchange, they shared a bond forged in the fires of battle. Humanity had survived countless wars, faced countless enemies, and yet it had always found a way forward. This small alien child, lost and afraid, had become a symbol of something greater: the ability to inspire trust, to protect life, and to change the course of events through courage and compassion. Ilias knew that the journey ahead would be even harder. The aliens would return, stronger and more determined. But for the first time that night, he allowed himself to hope. Humans had faced impossible odds before, and they would do so again. They would endure, adapt, and protect, no matter the cost. As the sun rose over the shattered city, Ilias led his squad and the child toward the next point of safety. Every step was careful, deliberate, but filled with purpose. They had survived the night, but the war was far from over. Humanity's story on Arvith was just beginning, and already it was clear that courage, ingenuity, and the willingness to protect the innocent were forces stronger than any weapon the galaxy could wield. In the heart of devastation, a human soldier carried a child who was the future of an enemy empire. And in that act, Ilias understood something profound. Humanity's strength was not measured in firepower or numbers, but in heart, in the will to fight, to protect, and to endure. And for now, that was enough to survive another day. The next morning, the sky over Arvith remained a dull, smoky gray. The ruins of the city stretched endlessly, broken buildings casting long shadows across streets filled with debris. Captain Ilias Kane led his squad carefully, the child princess walking beside him now, her small hand brushing against his armor as they moved. Her device pulsed faintly, a soft rhythm that seemed almost like a heartbeat, and Ilias felt an odd reassurance from its presence. It was a fragile calm, the quiet before the storm he knew was coming. The squad had found temporary shelter in the remains of an old human research facility, a building partially intact enough to serve as a base for planning and rest. Inside, the walls were scorched, but the air was marginally safer. Sensors still detected faint energy signatures outside, likely alien patrols returning to search the area. Ilias set up a perimeter with his squad, each soldier taking a position near the few intact windows and corridors. They were weary but alert, aware that danger could come at any moment. The child sat quietly on a metal crate in the center of the room, the device resting on her lap. Her violet eyes were thoughtful, almost distant, as if she were weighing the choices of a world she barely understood. Ilias knelt beside her, careful not to crowd her, and spoke softly. "You've been through a lot. Do you understand what's happening out there?" Ilias caught only fragments of it, sounds melodic and strange, yet her tone carried meaning beyond the words. It was a language of precision, intelligence, and intent. She gestured to the device, and Ilias understood she wanted him to know that it was more than a tool. It was a key, perhaps to her survival, perhaps to something far greater. Doctor. Marave, a human scientist who had been part of the squad's support unit, stepped closer. She had been studying the glowing device, fascinated and cautious. "Captain Kane," she said, "I think it's some sort of energy matrix, maybe psychic-linked. It responds to her thoughts. Whatever it is, it's powerful, but it's also fragile." She glanced at the child, noting the small lines of worry etched on her young face. "And she's controlling it. That's not common. Very few beings can do that at her age." She carried within her a strength that could change the course of events, but she was vulnerable in other ways. Protecting her required more than weapons. It required understanding, trust, and patience. Humanity had survived countless wars because it could adapt, think, and protect the vulnerable. And now, that strength was being tested in the most profound way yet. The child reached out and touched Dr. Vei's hand, and the device emitted a soft pulse. The scientist stepped back, startled, feeling a faint warmth ripple through her body. The child tilted her head, as if assessing the human's reaction, and then looked at Ilias. In her eyes was a silent question. Could humans be trusted? Could they carry the weight of her future, the future of her people? Ilias smiled gently, meeting her gaze. "We won't let anything happen to you," he promised. "We'll protect you and we'll help you survive. That's what humans do." The child hesitated, then gave the tiniest nod, the first sign of trust she had shown since the battlefield. As the humans prepared their defenses and planned the next move, the child began speaking in her language again, this time slowly, deliberately. Dr. Vei listened closely, trying to decode the words, and Ilias watched, realizing that something extraordinary was unfolding. The child spoke of visions, fragments of a prophecy from her people. She described a galaxy on the brink of destruction, a war that could consume worlds if left unchecked. But she also spoke of hope, of a human and a Zarkan working together to prevent catastrophe. Ilias frowned. "You're saying I'm part of a prophecy?" he asked, half joking, half serious. The child tilted her head, her small lips pressed together, and then nodded slightly. It was clear she believed it, and in her mind he was not just a protector but a necessary part of the future. Humanity had faced legends, myths, and prophecies before, but this was real, tangible, and terrifying. The galaxy's survival rested in part on their ability to protect a child who had the power to change everything. The squad listened silently. Some were skeptical, but they had witnessed her abilities firsthand. The pulsing device, her awareness, and the strange energy that emanated from her made it impossible to dismiss her claims entirely. Ilias understood that human courage would be tested in ways far beyond battlefield tactics. They were about to defend more than life itself. They were about to defend hope, a fragile but powerful force that could alter the course of history. The child led Ilias and Dr. Vei to a small, hidden room in the facility. The walls were covered with alien inscriptions, faded and broken, but still readable by those who understood the language. She gestured toward the markings, then toward the device. Slowly, Ilias began to understand. The device was linked to her people's knowledge, their history, and perhaps even their collective memory. It was a bridge between her world and humanity, and through it, she could guide them toward understanding what was necessary to survive. Dr. Vei studied the markings, her brow furrowed. This is advanced," she murmured. "It's not just energy manipulation. It's a form of communication, strategy, and memory storage. She could access centuries of knowledge if she learns to control it fully. But it's dangerous. The energy output could be lethal if misused." "That's our mission now." He looked at the child, whose small hand rested on the device. In her eyes, he saw both fear and determination, and he realized that humanity's strength would need to shine brighter than ever. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. The calm of the research facility did not last. Alien patrols soon returned, drawn by the faint energy signature of the child's device. The first alert came from a motion sensor, followed by the distant hum of approaching machinery. Ilias signaled his squad, and they quickly took positions, preparing for another assault. This time, the battle would not only be physical, but also a test of strategy, intelligence, and adaptability. When the aliens arrived, they moved with precision, their formations tight and calculated. But humans were different. They adapted, improvised, and used every element of their environment to their advantage. Elias led his squad with quiet authority, directing them to create traps and distractions. Debris was rigged to collapse. Energy pulses from the child's device were timed to disable alien sensors, and improvised barricades funneled the attackers into kill zones. The child watched closely, her violet eyes observing the human soldiers as they fought. She understood strategy, cause, and effect, and perhaps even morality in ways she could not fully articulate. When a patrol approached too closely, she extended her hand, and the device emitted a controlled pulse. The aliens froze, disoriented by the energy, and Elia's squad moved in swiftly to disable them. Hours passed in tense skirmishes. Every encounter tested both the human's endurance and the child's ability to focus her powers. Yet with each success, the bond between them grew stronger. Elias realized that humanity's greatest victories were not always measured in destroyed enemies or captured territory, but in trust, protection, and the willingness to act selflessly. By the end of the day, the patrols had been repelled. The child sat beside Elias, exhausted but unafraid. She spoke softly in her language, and Dr. Vey listened carefully. The words were a mixture of gratitude and guidance, fragments of the prophecy that outlined the coming trials. Humanity had been tested and proven capable of more than mere survival. They had protected, adapted, and inspired trust in a being whose life could change the fate of entire worlds. Elias looked at her, feeling a profound sense of responsibility. The war was far from over, and the challenges ahead would only grow greater. But in this small, fragile, determined child, he saw the potential for something extraordinary. Humanity could endure, and they could inspire others, even those who had once been enemies. As night fell once more over Arvith, the facility was quiet. The child rested beside Elias, the device pulsing softly, a symbol of knowledge, power, and potential. Outside, the ruins waited, and the distant hum of alien patrols reminded them that danger was never far away. Yet within these walls, humanity had proven itself again. They had survived. They had protected. They had inspired trust in the most unlikely of allies. And as Elias watched the child sleep, he understood something vital. The galaxy's future was uncertain, but humanity's strength, courage, intelligence, and compassion was undeniable. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The morning on Arvith arrived like a shadow, pale and faint through the smoke-filled sky. The ruins of the city glimmered dimly under the first light, casting long, jagged shadows over streets littered with debris. Captain Elias Kane crouched behind the remains of a fallen building, scanning the horizon with sharp, calculating eyes. His squad was tense, their weapons ready, muscles coiled like springs. Today, they knew would be different. The enemy had discovered the child princess's location, and a full-scale assault was coming. The alien ships appeared first, dark silhouettes against the smoky sky, their engines humming with a low, threatening vibration. Elias counted at least 10 hovercraft, each bristling with energy cannons and heavy weaponry. On the ground, squads of armored Zarkan soldiers advanced in formation, their glowing eyes scanning for movement. This was no random patrol. It was a strike force designed to annihilate everything in its path. Elias' jaw tightened. Humanity had faced impossible odds before, but this was a true test, a war fought not just for survival, but for the protection of something far greater. Positions, Elias barked. His squad scattered, taking cover behind rubble, collapsed walls, and twisted metal. The child princess clutched his arm, her small hand trembling slightly, but there was determination in her violet eyes. Elias knelt beside her. "Stay close," he said. "We'll get through this, I promise." She nodded, her trust in him clear, though unspoken. Humanity's strength, he thought, was not just in weapons, but in courage and the bonds they could form, even in the face of overwhelming fear. The first volley struck with a roar of energy. Buildings crumbled, dust and fire filled the air, and the squad scattered, moving through the chaos with precision and purpose. Elias ducked behind a fallen wall, the child pressed against his chest. He fired his rifle with controlled bursts, each shot calculated to suppress and disrupt the advancing aliens. Corporal Juno lobbed improvised grenades, scattering groups of enemies, while Lieutenant Verk activated a makeshift turret that fired in sweeping arcs, holding back the attackers temporarily. The child watched quietly, her device pulsing faintly in response to the energy around her. Elias noticed her small hands twitching slightly, and a soft glow radiated from the device. A pulse of energy shot out, striking an advancing Zarkan patrol. The soldiers staggered, disoriented, their weapons flickering. Elias realized with a mixture of awe and relief that the child could influence the battlefield in subtle but powerful ways. Humanity had always adapted, always found strength in unexpected places, and now that strength was embodied in the smallest member of their group. Despite the chaos, Elias maintained focus. "Hold the line!" he shouted. The squad moved like shadows among the ruins, using every element of the environment to their advantage. They rigged debris to collapse on advancing enemies, set traps with fallen alien technology, and coordinated attacks to maximize their limited firepower. The aliens were organized, relentless, and powerful, but they were not human. They could not anticipate ingenuity born from desperation and courage. Hours passed, and the fight dragged on. Explosions tore through the streets, smoke and dust made visibility nearly impossible, and the sound of weapons fire filled every corner. The squad was exhausted, sweat and grime coating their faces, yet they pressed on. Elias carried the child through the worst of the fire, shielding her from falling debris and energy blasts. She clung to him, small but unyielding, her presence a reminder of why they fought. Humanity had survived countless wars because they never gave up, because they protected the innocent, and because they inspired hope even in the darkest of times. At one point, a massive alien mech appeared, its armored frame dwarfing the surrounding ruins. It advanced with slow, unstoppable power, energy cannons swinging in arcs that could level entire buildings. Elias' squad froze for a moment, the sheer scale of the threat daunting. But hesitation was a luxury they could not afford. He barked orders and the squad sprang into action. Grenades, energy pulses, and improvised traps erupted in a coordinated assault, each human action precise and intentional. The child's device pulsed again, brighter this time. Elias felt the vibrations through his hands, and suddenly the mech staggered as if struck by an invisible force. Sparks flew across its armor, and the Zarkan soldiers around it faltered. The child's small hands moved instinctively, directing bursts of energy that disrupted the alien machines, giving the humans precious moments to strike. Elias realized that she was not just powerful, she was a force multiplier. Humanity's ingenuity, combined with her latent abilities, created a synergy that could challenge even the most formidable enemy. Despite their efforts, the cost was high. Buildings crumbled, allies fell, and the ground shook with the impact of alien artillery. Elias pressed forward, rallying his squad with words, actions, and sheer determination. "We protect her," he shouted, "no matter what." Each human heart beat with that single purpose, and even when exhaustion threatened to break them, they continued. Humanity had always been strongest when defending the weak, when fighting for something beyond themselves. The battle reached a turning point when the aliens attempted a flanking maneuver, trying to encircle the humans and the child. Elias anticipated the move, directing his squad to counter it with traps and ambushes. The child extended her hands, and her device pulsed in a controlled rhythm, sending waves of energy that disrupted the alien formation. The squad seized the opportunity, striking with precision and coordination. One by one, the flanking units were neutralized, and the line held. Humanity had adapted, survived, and turned the tide through courage and strategy. As the sun dipped low, the battlefield grew quiet for a moment, a brief pause between waves. The squad regrouped, exhausted and battered, but alive. The child sat beside Elias, her device pulsing softly. She looked at him with wide eyes, a mix of awe and trust. Elias knelt beside her, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "You did well," he said softly. "Together we can survive anything." She nodded, her small fingers brushing against his armor. In that silent moment, he understood the truth. Humanity's greatest strength was not in numbers or weapons, but in heart, courage, and the ability to protect and inspire others. But the war was far from over. From the shadows of the ruins, new patrols began to emerge, their mechanical eyes scanning for signs of life. Elias signaled his squad, and they prepared once more. The child's device pulsed in anticipation, and Elias realized that this young alien princess had become not just a symbol of hope, but a key to survival. Humanity had endured worse, faced greater odds, and yet they continued. And now they had a reason to fight not just for themselves, but for a future that could unite worlds. As night fell over the ruined city, the squad fortified their position. Barricades were reinforced, traps set, and sensors calibrated to detect incoming threats. The child sat in the center, her device glowing softly, a beacon of both power and vulnerability. Elias kept watch over her, knowing that the battles ahead would be even more dangerous. But he also knew that humanity's resilience, intelligence, and courage would continue to shine. In the quiet moments, he reflected on the day's events. They had faced overwhelming forces, survived impossible odds, and protected something precious. Each human action had mattered, each decision had consequences, and each act of courage had turned the tide. Humanity was not invincible, but it was relentless. It could adapt, protect, and inspire. And in this child, Elias saw a reflection of that very spirit. The night stretched on, but for the first time there was a sense of fragile victory. The aliens had been repelled, but the cost had been high. Soldiers nursed wounds, bodies of fallen comrades lay solemnly in the ruins, and the city itself seemed to groan under the weight of destruction. Yet amidst it all, the child remained safe, a symbol of hope and potential. Elias realized that protecting her was not just an act of survival. It was a declaration of what humanity stood for: courage, compassion, and the will to endure no matter the odds. As the stars peeked through the smoky sky, Elias allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. The child rested, her device pulsing softly, and he could see the trust forming between them. Humanity had survived because it never gave up, because it adapted, and because it protected what mattered most. And tonight, on the battlefield of Arvith, they had done all three. Elias tightened his grip on his rifle, scanning the horizon. The war was far from over, and the next challenge would be even greater. But for now, they had survived. They had defended the child. They had proven once more that humanity's strength lay not in firepower alone, but in courage, ingenuity, and heart. And as long as they held to those principles, there was no force in the galaxy that could truly break them. The child's violet eyes met his, and in that silent gaze, Elias understood something profound. The galaxy's future was uncertain, but humanity's spirit was unwavering. Whatever came next, they would face it together, humans and the child, side by side, bound by trust, courage, and the unyielding will to survive. And that, he realized, was the most powerful weapon of all. The sky over Arvith was a dull red, painted by fires still burning across the ruins of the city. Smoke twisted into the air, thick and heavy, carrying the scent of ash, metal, and scorched earth. Captain Elias Kane crouched on a collapsed wall, the child princess in his arms. Her violet eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the light of distant explosions. This was it, the final assault, the moment that could decide not just the fate of their group, but the future of the galaxy itself. The alien forces approached like a storm. Massive war machines advanced over the shattered terrain, their weapons crackling with energy that could reduce entire city blocks to rubble in seconds. Hovercraft swooped through the sky, dropping squads of armored soldiers into the ruins below. Elias' squad was battered, exhausted, and wounded, yet their resolve had not faltered. They had survived impossible odds before, and they would survive again. Humanity's strength had always been in its courage, adaptability, and heart, qualities that no machine could fully destroy. "Positions!" Elias shouted, his voice carrying across the chaos. "Protect her at all costs. Hold your ground and keep fighting." The soldiers moved into place, their bodies tense, weapons ready, eyes scanning every corner for threats. Each one understood what was at stake. They were not just defending themselves, they were defending hope, the fragile possibility of peace in a galaxy ruled by fear and war. The child princess clutched her glowing device tightly. She had learned to control it more steadily now, focusing her energy to create defensive barriers and pulses that disrupted alien technology. Her small hands moved with precision, her violet eyes narrowing in concentration. Elias watched her, a mix of awe and pride swelling in his chest. Humanity's ingenuity had brought them this far, but the child's courage and power made victory possible. Together they were unstoppable. The first wave of aliens reached them and the battle erupted. Energy bolts tore through the air, fire exploded across the ruins, and metal screamed as it twisted under attack. Elias fired his rifle with practiced precision, taking down enemies one by one, while his squad moved in coordinated flurries, using traps, barricades, and debris to their advantage. Every human movement was calculated, every decision purposeful. Survival depended not on numbers, but on skill, courage, and teamwork. The child extended her hands, and a pulse of energy radiated from the device. Alien machines convulsed, their systems temporarily disabled, giving the humans a critical advantage. Soldiers surged forward, striking with precise, coordinated attacks. Elias ducked behind a wall as a hovercraft swooped low, firing energy blasts. He rolled to the side, protecting the child in his arms, and returned fire with steady accuracy. Every action mattered, every moment could mean life or death. Hours passed in a blur of chaos. Smoke, fire, and energy explosions filled the air, but the humans held their ground. Exhaustion clawed at them, yet they refused to surrender. Humanity had survived for countless generations because they refused to give up, because they protected those who could not protect themselves, and because they found strength in courage, ingenuity, and heart. And now, all those qualities were on display in the middle of a war-torn city on a distant planet. At a critical moment, the alien commander appeared, a towering figure in black and gold armor, wielding a weapon that pulsed with deadly energy. He moved toward the child, intending to capture or destroy her. Ilia's heart pounded. This was the moment they had feared most. "No!" he shouted, charging forward, the child pressed against his chest. Every step was measured, every breath controlled. Humanity's defiance burned brightly in him. They would not yield, not now, not ever. The child's device pulsed fiercely, a bright wave of energy spreading outward. The alien commander staggered, momentarily stunned, but continued advancing. Ilias fired his rifle, aiming at weak points in the armor while his squad unleashed everything they had. The combined human effort, strategic traps, and the child's energy pulses began to overwhelm even the most formidable alien forces. Humanity's persistence, courage, and intelligence had turned the tide once again. The child raised her hands higher, concentrating. The device glowed brighter, casting a protective field over the squad. Aliens trying to penetrate it were repelled, thrown back by waves of energy. Ilias realized the moment of opportunity had come. He charged with his squad, coordinated with precision, and struck at the alien commander. The battle reached its peak, a blur of motion, energy, and determination. Humans moved like a single organism, every action enhancing the other, and the child's power guided them, amplifying their efforts. The alien commander roared in frustration and fury, but the humans refused to falter. They adapted, improvised, and continued fighting despite exhaustion. Ilias met the commander directly, exchanging fire in close quarters. Every skill, every tactic learned over countless battles came into play. Humanity was being tested to its absolute limit, but they endured, using courage, intelligence, and teamwork to survive. Finally, the alien commander fell, overwhelmed by combined human strategy and the child's energy. The remaining alien forces hesitated, confused and shaken by the humans' resilience and the princess's control over the device. Ilias' squad seized the moment, pushing forward and defeating the remaining attackers with precision. The battlefield fell silent, save for the smoke rising from fires and the soft pulse of the child's device. Ilias knelt in the rubble, holding the child carefully. She rested her head against his chest, exhausted but unafraid. Her violet eyes met his, and in that silent gaze there was understanding, trust, and relief. Humanity had survived again, not just through weapons, but through courage, protection, and determination. The child's presence, her power, and her trust had shown the humans something profound. Strength was not only physical, but moral, emotional, and intellectual. The squad gathered around them, battered but alive. They had faced overwhelming odds, survived impossible attacks, and protected life in the midst of destruction. Ilias looked at each soldier, pride swelling in his chest. Humans had endured wars across centuries and star systems, and their resilience had never wavered. They had fought not just for survival, but for hope, compassion, and the protection of the innocent. The child, still in Ilias' arms, gave a small, shy smile. It was a simple gesture, but it carried immense meaning. She had been afraid, alone, and hunted, but she had come to trust humanity. That trust was more powerful than any weapon, stronger than any army, and more enduring than any empire. Humanity had earned it through courage, ingenuity, and unwavering protection. Ilias gently set her down, and she wrapped her small arms around his neck in a quiet embrace. It was a moment that transcended language, species, and war. The battlefield, the destruction, the years of conflict, all of it faded for a brief, perfect moment. The child had chosen humanity, and humanity had risen to protect her. It was a triumph of spirit, compassion, and resilience, a true human victory. Outside, the ruins of the city were quiet. Alien forces had retreated, their morale broken, their technology disrupted. Humanity had endured the final assault, proving that courage, ingenuity, and the willingness to protect others could overcome overwhelming odds. Ilias looked at the child, then at his squad, and a sense of hope filled him. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but humans had survived again. They had proven that their spirit could inspire even the most alien of hearts. The child's device pulsed softly, casting a gentle light over the group. Elias realized it symbolized more than power. It symbolized trust, hope, and the potential for peace. She had been a tool, a weapon, and now a bridge between humanity and an alien empire that had once seemed invincible. Humanity had shown that even in the darkest times, courage and compassion could prevail. As the sun set over Arvith, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, Elias held the child once more. She looked up at him, and for the first time she smiled fully. It was a smile of relief, understanding, and perhaps even joy. Humanity had not only survived, they had inspired trust and hope. The galaxy had witnessed a moment that could change everything, the strength of the human heart. Elias turned to his squad. "We did it," he said quietly. "We protected her, we survived, and we've shown that humanity can endure anything." The soldiers nodded, tired but proud. Each one had faced fear, chaos, and death, yet they had prevailed. They were humans, and their resilience was unmatched. The child princess leaned against Elias, her small hand resting on his armor. "Thank you," she whispered in her broken but understandable voice. It was the first time she had spoken in human words, and Elias felt the weight of her gratitude. Humanity had given her a chance to survive, to trust, and perhaps to change the fate of her empire. Elias smiled gently. "No," he replied. "Thank you for showing us that courage, hope, and trust matter. That even the smallest among us can inspire the greatest change. Humanity survives because we protect, we endure, and we care. And now you're part of that." They had faced impossible odds and survived through courage, ingenuity, and compassion. The child princess had been saved, and in doing so, humanity had proven once again that their spirit was a force that no enemy could truly overcome. Elias held her close as they watched the stars, thinking of the future. There would be more battles, more challenges, more threats to face. But he knew this: humans would endure. They would protect, inspire, and rise to every challenge, no matter how great. And sometimes the greatest victories were not measured in territory or numbers, but in trust, hope, and the courage to embrace the impossible. The child pressed her head against his shoulder, a quiet, lasting bond forming between human and alien. In that moment, the galaxy seemed a little smaller, a little more connected. And for the first time in a long time, Elias Kane allowed himself to hope that humanity's courage could inspire not just survival, but lasting peace. And so, on the battlefield of Arvith, amidst the ruins and the smoke, humanity had triumphed. Not just through weapons, but through heart, resilience, and unwavering determination. The child had embraced the human in his arms, and in that embrace lay the promise of a future where courage and compassion could truly change the galaxy.